This is Korea News for March 14, 2022. The government announced on the 14th that it would reveal detailed plans for vaccinations for children aged 5 to 11 years old. In the midst of this, information about the effects of vaccination on infants and toddlers comes and goes, and parents are confused. Recently, a U.S. study found that Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine was significantly less effective in preventing infection in children between the ages of 5 and 11. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, approved the Pfizer vaccine for children 5 years of age and older. In early February, the FDA said it was considering whether to approve the Pfizer vaccine for infants 6 months to 5 years old, but cancelled the plan after 10 days. According to the Associated Press on the 10th, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is developing guidelines to lift the federal government mandate to wear masks in public transportation. This is being reviewed as the 50 U.S. states, including Hawaii, have recently eased the obligation to wear indoor masks, and the CDC recommendation level has also been lowered. The CDC previously assessed that 85% of U.S. administrative districts had a low-moderate risk of spreading the coronavirus. Therefore, the mandatory wearing of a mask when using public transportation such as air or train in the United States is expected to be lifted as early as next month. Initially, the mandatory public transport mask was scheduled to expire on the 18th of this month, but it is interpreted that it was extended by another month due to the preparation of related guidelines. President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol's pledge to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, a key pledge, is expected to be actively opposed by the Democratic Party of Korea, which will become a major opposition party. President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol re-emphasized the implementation of his core pledge, the pledge to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. Although the Democratic Party of Korea, which will become a major opposition party, seems to oppose the abolition of the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, President-elect Yoon reaffirmed his position on the abolition of the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family even in the midst of the Yosoya University. If the Democratic Party opposes, the possibility of a reoccurrence of the opposition's holding the ankle cannot be ruled out, as the government organization law to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family cannot pass the National Assembly. In a question-and-answer session following the announcement of the main composition of the Presidential Transition Committee at Udo, Seoul on the 13th, Yoon-elect was asked how to break through the opposition from the Democratic Party over the abolition of the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. "Are you?" he replied. President-elect Yoon said, "I have established a principle. I think it is difficult to solve the problems of crime and injustice that women or men face in specific situations with the collective part of women and men and the equal treatment of the collective." He added, "I think it is necessary to design an effective government organization for the relief of unfairness, human rights violations and rights." In the process of forming the transition committee, President-elect Yoon decided not to consider the women's quota system and arrangement in Yonghonam area. President-elect Yoon said, "I think that there is a high possibility that young people and future generations will be disappointed with the government." On January 7, the then-elected presidential candidate Yoon received attention by posting a 7-letter message to a social network service saying, "The Ministry of Gender Equality and Family will be abolished." In an interview with the media, regarding the pledge to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, "There is no more structural gender discrimination. Discrimination is a personal matter." As President-elect Yoon re-emphasized the abolition of the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, the key point seems to be the female soyalty politics. The Democratic Party and former presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung have previously criticized President-elect Yoon's promise to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family as bad politics using discrimination and hatred such as gender division. In particular, as they confirmed the overwhelming support of women in their 20s in this election, it is expected that they will actively oppose the pledge. Democratic Party lawmaker Chung Chong-rae posted on Facebook on the 12th, "At the Transition Committee of former President Lee Myung-bak, we tried to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family and the Ministry of Unification, but failed. The government organization law must pass through the National Assembly," she wrote. She continued, it will not be easy to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, she added. The police are in charge of the investigation into the suspicion of the Gyeonggi Housing and Urban Corporation GH dormitory secret camp by Lee Jae-myung, a former presidential candidate of the Democratic Party, whom the People's Power requested to the prosecution last month. On the 22nd of last month, the Suwon District Prosecutor's Office forwarded the case in which the People's Power filed a complaint against former GH President Lee Hun-wook in relation to the allegations to the Gyeonggi Nambu Police Agency. The Gyeonggi Nambu Police Agency is currently investigating allegations of preferential treatment for development in Daejangdong, Songnam, allegations of illegal gambling of the eldest son of candidate Lee Jae-myung, suspicion of misappropriation of Gyeonggi-do corporate card, re-investigation of Kim Hye-jeong, and suspicion of donations to Songnam FC. People's Power also requested an investigation into Lee, the former president of GH, while accusing the then presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung and his wife Kim Hye-kyung of misappropriating a Gyeonggi corporate card. An official from the prosecution explained, "We have considered that the Gyeonggi Nambu Police Agency is already investigating the allegation of misappropriation of corporate cards by Lee Jae-myung and Lee Jae-myung, who were accused together with former President Lee." The GH Panjo project team leased a 61 Pyongyang apartment in Sunidong, Bundang-gu, Songnam Si for 2 years at a deposit of 950 million won in August 2020, when Lee Jae-myung was the governor of Gyeonggi-do. This apartment is said to be next door to candidate Lee Jae-myung. The GH side claimed that it was used as a lodging for employees living in remote areas, but the apartment next door was where the candidate Lee bought and lived in 1997, so suspicions arose as to whether the lodging was correct. Kim Ki-hyeon, floor leader of the People's Power, said, "I cannot help but reasonably doubt that the GH camp was moved to the site of candidate Lee Jae-myung's home and used illegally, and that he was preparing for the presidential election, such as preparing for candidate Lee Jae-myung's promises. They have been charged with violations." The former president of GH then said on his Facebook, "The claim of the People's Power that the GH dormitory next door to candidate Lee Jae-myung's house was used as an election office is a clear falsehood. We operate the dormitory according to our judgment. The lease contract is also handled by itself, so it is not reported to the president separately." The former president of GH served as an advisor to Songnam FC and Jubilee Bank in 2015 when candidate Lee Jae-myung was the mayor of Songnam. A plan is being considered to lower the property tax for this year to the level of 2020 before the official land price soars, and to freeze the comprehensive real estate tax for first-generation, one homeowners at last year's level. According to Yonhap News on the 13th, the government and the National Assembly announced that the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety, and the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, etc., plan to announce a plan to ease the ownership tax burden on the 22nd in line with the disclosure of this year's public housing price plan on the 22nd. Following a 19% increase in the public housing price last year, it is expected to rise by around 20% this year as well. This proposal to ease the burden of property tax is expected to be the first major economic policy adjustment by President-elect Yoon Suk-yeol. Samsung SDI will withdraw all battery pack factories from China. Samsung SDI is reducing the portion of its business in China. It is a strategy to make overseas production lines more efficient by suspending non-core, low-performing businesses. The industry believes that Samsung SDI's reduction in the portion of its Chinese business has nothing to do with local battery regulations. According to the battery industry on the 14th, Samsung SDI liquidated its battery pack corporation located in Wuxi, China at the end of last year. Earlier last year, Samsung SDI completed the liquidation of its battery pack corporation in Changchun. As a result, Samsung SDI completely withdrew from the battery pack business in China. Samsung SDI liquidated the two battery pack corporations because of its poor performance. The Wuxi subsidiary recorded a net loss of 100 million won in both 2020 and last year. Excluding 2018, the Chongchun subsidiary also posted a net loss of 600 million won in 2016, 800 million won in 2017, and 900 million won in 2019. This is also in line with the quality growth strategy of Samsung SDI CEO Yoon Ho Choi, who took office at the end of last year. In his New Year's address in January, CEO Choi, who is a financial expert, urged employees to achieve qualitative growth with superior profitability through thorough risk management. This is interpreted as meaning that the company will boldly close off low profitable businesses and maximize profitability by strengthening its core businesses. It is said that the two corporations were unable to operate normally from the beginning of their establishment due to the Chinese government's battery regulations and the retaliation. The Wuxi subsidiary completed the selection of a factory site and establishment of a corporation in 2015. However, the project was delayed as the Chinese government decided not to provide subsidies for electric vehicles equipped with Korean batteries. At that time, regulations on Korean batteries were part of its retaliation. Samsung SDI plans to focus on operating battery cell factories in Tianjin and Xi'an while withdrawing all pack factories in China. The two cell factories also struggled as the utilization rate fell from 10 to 20% due to battery regulations in China in 2015, when they were initially established. Currently, it is operating normally while supplying production volumes to European automakers. Although the Chinese government is gradually loosening regulations on Korean batteries, industry analysts say that it is still not easy to penetrate the local market. The biggest concern for Korean companies with local battery factories is that in many cases the factory operation rate is reduced according to the Chinese government's policy. Samsung SDI is currently in the process of expanding its plant in Hungary. It is also in the process of establishing a battery joint venture in the United States with global automaker Stellantis. The industry predicts that Samsung SDI's share of China's business will further decrease when production bases are established in the US and Europe. Thank you for watching today. Please like and subscribe.